Hello, 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 LinkedIn, and welcome back to the Voice of a Leader show. If you are new here, then welcome. I'm your host, Marina, and the show is brought to you by Brand of a Leader, a personal branding agency for entrepreneurs and CEOs. We say Gen X entrepreneurs and CEOs, but we've realized that a lot of Gen Xers don't know that they're Gen Xers. And then there's that educational piece as well, the forgotten generation. If you are not new here, then welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching the interviews I get to conduct with amazing people that are always such a privilege and an honor to have on my show. A different background, as you might have noticed, if you are not new to the Voice of a Leader show. I'm on the road, but as they say, the show must go on. So we continue streaming even when I'm not in my office in Montreal. Today, I have a super special guest, and I'm very, very excited about today's interview. Today, I'm interviewing somebody who was part of the Brand of a Leader journey really before there was even Brand of a Leader. So kind of the precursor to the journey. During the pandemic, at the very, very beginning of the pandemic, I met my today's guest, Darya, somewhere through the virtual LinkedIn stratosphere. And when we got to speak, I was fascinated by her line of work. She is a vision coach. She helps entrepreneurs, not only entrepreneurs, but she helps people figure out the vision for their life, the vision for their business if they are an entrepreneur. So she helps crystallize that vision. But she does more than that. She then somehow helps that vision come true. And that's really cool and unique because I find that either people are there to help you figure out what your vision should be, or there are people that can help you work towards a vision. But Darya is like a two-in-one magic creator. So when we started working together, I had an idea of this new business that I wanted to create, this personal branding agency, but the idea was very vague. And through a series of discussions and meditations, Darya helped me map out really what the business was going to be, who our clients would be, what the clients would be saying about us. Like really not only in broad strokes, but really in very granular details as well. She then recorded a meditation for me um, that described that vision as though it had already come true. I listened to it every single day. I kid you not. Maybe speaks a bit to my vanity also. But then the most incredible thing is that those things that we had discussed started happening. So they just started, and I would catch myself realizing that another thing happened. And so it has been pretty magical. So now you see why I'm so excited to have Darya on as a guest. She does incredible work, impactful work. She's helped me, but she's helped so many others, in my network that I know of, but of course, people that she works with beyond. So without further ado, enough of me talking. Darya, I'm so excited to welcome you to my virtual stage. How are you?
Hello, I'm really well, thank you. What a pleasure to be here, and what a kind introduction. It's,
I had to like tell like the abridged version of the story that I've told to so many people over the years, and I just realized I should go back and re-listen to that meditation that you created for me. What it's been three 3 years now, three and a bit, yeah, 3 years, and see what other things have come true that I might not even be realizing.
yeah, that was a really fun one. I remember it. It's such a throwback. It was just over 3 years ago in May, and we went into the details. So it was a visualization that we did together with a little bit of prep work. And I remember maybe a few days later, you messaging me and saying people were inboxing you, requesting or asking if you could provide this kind of help without you promoting it or advertising it. And that was just like a wow moment. So it's been quite a journey since then. And I'm really happy and excited for everything you've created.
Thank you with your help. And it's interesting because there had been other things also over the years because we continued working together that would keep occurring as well. And every time something happened, I would say, "This is so weird. This is crazy." I would tell you about it, and you would like have this like knowing look on your face, be like, "Of course." And I'm like, "What do you mean, of course? This is crazy. Like this comes out of nowhere." So first, for our viewers, how did you come upon this line of work? Because I know you come from a business background, very different background. So how did you start doing this type of work, and how did you land specifically on wanting to work with visioning, visualizations, and those things in particular?
Gosh, great question. It's been a journey. When I was 18, I came across a book that fascinated me by back in the day, this was a Soviet scientist, experimenter man who helped many, many people and worked with children, especially to help them. And through this book, so his last name is Norbekov, and the book was around how to improve your eyesight. Through this book, I started peeking into what is possible in the human potential. And I come from Ukraine, so this book was readily available to me. My parents passed it on to me at some point. And at that point, I was studying finance. I went into investments in the finance world in my official education, but it planted a seed of what is possible and what could be done. And I remember reading those stories and being just blown away. And it stayed with me. And then many things changed. I moved to Montreal. I had a creative agency I ran. And when I moved to Montreal, I re-entered that world through books, through podcasts, through friends, through people I met. I started, I think, my kind of spiritual journey, if we may call it so, a journey of relearning or learning around emotional intelligence, personal growth, spirituality, and was very closeted about it.
Mhm.
In that sense. So
Why closeted?
I had this business persona that I was attached to that I wanted to upkeep, and at that point, the two worlds could not collide for me. It felt I would not be taken seriously, or if that was more part of my public
Mm-hmm.
face. And so I've been in Montreal, was it maybe 12 years now, since 2012. And over the course of the years that followed, I just dove into studies and certifications and learning and discovering what are we capable of. And visualization, manifesting is another word that gets thrown around a lot, and we can um, unpack it a little bit if you'd like at some point, was fascinating for me. And I was starting to create things in my life and see what's possible. So I remember back in 2015 having this desire to go to this beautiful conference that was like a TEDx slash music conference and consciousness conference. And somehow it manifested within 6 months. I got a ticket to go to it. Everything aligned perfectly. And it was one of the kind of a big events that has happened that showed me like, oh, wow, this could be fun. These things could happen. And many things have been created or that I have created. And we create all the time. We are manifesting or we're creating all the time. It's just where the lens is being focused on, what we're putting our attention on, that matters. And so I was an entrepreneur. I was running the agency with my partner. I had a startup at some point, and I was recognizing a divide inside of me between this world that I really cared about and the public world, I would say, or the business world I was a part of. And there was a dissonance in who I really am. And I started feeling very unhappy inside. And I didn't really even know why yet. So one morning, as they say, I woke up and felt I want to want this trajectory of being the COO of the startup that we were building in customer research, but I don't want it. I would love to want it, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And what followed maybe between 2017 to 2019 is a 2-year inner journey or a dive into who I really am, what do I really want, more more workshops, more going to therapy and figuring things out. And around beginning of 2019, I came into this kind of inner state of knowing this is it. I am done not living in my truth, and this is the year I'm going to change my life. This is the year that I'm going to shift things. Um, I also had a strange, like eczema skin condition that appeared. So I was sort of in a very unhappy relationship, in an unhappy job. And I believe things manifest physically when we're not living in our alignment and what we're meant to be doing. And at the beginning of 2019, I decided to change my life and I went to practices that my mentors and teachers were teaching me. And I began meditating every day. I remember it clearly, it was maybe February 2019. So I would do the Wim Hof breathing, which I loved, and then drop into a deep meditation. And as I began doing the practices I was taught, the skin condition just went away. I began
Wow.
getting a lot of clarity. And then a series of synchronicities led me to one event, another event, and a program that I took that summer where I met a woman who introduced me to this technique that's been around for thousands of years of imagining that you are stepping into your future self and future practicing, future rehearsing for an event, an audition, a wish, a dream, a goal that you have. And I became just fascinated by it. And by that point, I already knew I wanted to coach, but I had no idea how long it would take me. It seemed like a goal, a stretch goal, years into the future. And her and I began practicing this practice. And I won't go into too much detail, but through that year, a lot of synchronicities, as I said, happened, and events where a friend invited me to co-create a mastermind with her and coach together and create content. We created a retreat together and created content. Um, and I would keep practicing this technique. I knew I wanted to bring it into the world and create something around it. I had no idea what that would be. And at that point, I was still with the business, but deciding I'm going to phase out by the end of the year, feeling really guilty that I will be letting people down. And how could I do this? How could I do what I want? And I remember having these visualizations where I would get into a state and imagine how seamless the transition will be by the end of the year, how it will just unpack itself and everything will fall into place. And getting into the feeling of peace, of seamlessness, not knowing how, but getting into the actual state of what it would be afterwards. And that's kind of exactly how it happened.
Hmm.
So that's how I got into it. By the end of the year, I was practicing as much as possible with individuals, working with their dreams, getting them to step into their futures. And then in 2020, recognizing there's much more to it as I began working with people and they said yes to me. They were having inner resistances, blocks, fears, belief systems that were holding them back from those dreams. So even if we do step in, there's a little bit more work that might need to happen. Working with you was so much fun. Because there's also often very little resistance to certain things. We would get something clear on a call, and then within a few days, you'll message me and say like, "Oh my God, this is happening."
Right, which was incredible. We need to do more of that. That reminds me, we haven't done that in a while. You mentioned that you had this. You were like a closeted discoverer of spirituality. I often hear that from people. Um, what was that transition period when you said that's okay? Because you said that the reason for that is you thought that you would be just misconstrued and like what would people think of you? Not professional,
Not
is
taken
what you said.
seriously. Mhm.
Yeah. So, what was that? Do you still feel that sometimes? Do you still have that fear sometimes that that's what people think? If so, how do you counterbalance that, or what was that pivotal point? Because for many people, even if they don't choose it as a line of work, they're developing a lot more interest in all those things that are connected to, let's say, spirituality, but they're still closeted because they have that same fear. So, do you still have it? And what was the pivotal point when you decided to come out with it?
Less and less. Sometimes still, yes. I think it would be dishonest to say it never occurs. But I find I'm internally, like there's an inner pillar that feels really strong around owning it these days. And I bring this work to my clients. And I think just to take one step back, it would be important to answer the question of why are we talking about, like, what does spirituality have to do with this to begin with? Why is it even phased in into the conversation around vision creation work or visualization
Right.
work? Like, why? Wow.
Why?
And as I was studying the various practices of the Eastern philosophies, I was really fascinated by neuroscience and how we create what we create. internally, in our physiology, in our belief systems, our subconscious mind. And I am a bridger of concepts and beliefs, and I have quite, like coming from math and finance, quite an analytical mind and
Mm-hmm.
also a very creative mind. And I began seeing that it's the same thing of the same two sides of the same coin. The concepts that I was learning around how we create through energetics, we hear like the law of attraction, etc., those concepts, and how we create in our physiology, how we create through the actions we take, through the emotions, through the thoughts that are behind them, how we can rewire our system, and seeing that it's really the same. So when I bridged everything together, I felt like my brain was dancing a happy dance, and I called it bridging magic with science.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe, at least for myself and the work that I want to embody, that I want to disambiguate the two, or I want to disconnect the two. I believe they have to go hand in hand. And the clients that I work with, I will not impose my spiritual beliefs on them, on the energetics of it. But I often find the people that come to me, they want to know more. They're curious about it, and so it will be introduced.
I think that's one of the, I've said this to you before too. I think that's one of the most unique things about you is how you combine the two. So there is, because to a lot of people, myself included, not anymore, but when we first started working together, it was very pragmatic, very rational. So this was just a very different world for me, which you've helped me discover, and it's been incredible. But at the time, I would not have been receptive to anybody who would have been just completely, 100% just spirituality and 100% in on that side, because we just wouldn't speak the same language.
Yeah, no, so it's grounding it in very practical terms and making it accessible and understandable. And um, most of the folks I work with these days would agree that there's something greater than us, that is a greater intelligence, and the capacity for myself to calculate all the steps is not there compared to the elegance of the algorithms that exist beyond me, of what can happen. And part of this visioning work is, we can go into the details of why we visualize, but going into the future, embodying the state, specifically the emotional state of the final outcome, of the final product. And then the rest of the coaching, the rest of the work, whether the person does it themselves or with me, is lining up to it and being in a receptive state and discovering the hows without perceiving what the hows should be. So the moment that we are trying to grapple with, like, how is this going to happen, or get too attached even to the outcome itself,
Mm.
we're creating so much resistance, and we're kind of putting kind of sticks in our wheels of the bicycle that we're riding on.
So, a lot of people, because you mentioned now, you said, whether you do it on your own or you do it with me, I don't know anybody who wouldn't benefit from being able to have a clear vision of where they're going. A lot of people in general feel, stuck, not clear, just don't have big clarity as far as, the future. And I noticed that definitely exacerbated with the pandemic, when a lot of people started questioning where they were at and vis-a-vis also where they were going. Do you think that this is the type of work, so being able to envision our future, visualize, and then work towards it? Do you think this is something that people can do on their own? Or because I know at the time I wouldn't have been able to, I wouldn't have known where to start. Or do you think that really, at least as a starting point, working with someone who guides you gives you something that you can't otherwise attain on your own? What are your thoughts on that?
It's the answer that I don't like the most, but it really applies here. It depends.
Okay.
It depends.
On what?
Um, I work as much with, primarily I work actually with individuals and with Gen Xers, to be very deliberate around designing that next phase, that next chapter of their life, and with businesses too. And people will come to me at different stages. So sometimes it's someone who is achieved, most of the folks have achieved quite a lot, but they haven't envisioned what that next, over that cliff, what that next piece will be. And they might have some pieces, but they're not sure yet, and they need someone to hold that container and trust and have the capacity to ask the right questions and do the right exercises to bring all of those pieces into clarity. Sometimes an individual has a lot of ideas and knows they're potentialite, or they have multiple goals and aspirations that they want to bring forward, but it's bringing it all into a clear image that makes sense and bridges together. Sometimes it's someone who is retiring and the world is their oyster and they can do anything, but they're not sure what exactly do I want to do with all of this capacity that I have. And sometimes it's someone who wants to who's ready to exit over the next 4 years and travel the world with their family and wants to design the vision for that exit, for example. So there are the goal is the same, but the individuals are at different stages and require different level of help. And sometimes, yes, sometimes an individual can do it on their own when they have that clarity. And I say that clarity is primarily around the way I want to feel, and then around what the thing is that you want it to look like. As we create with our emotions, what we do is we create an emotional field or an emotional signature, something you can almost like taste, and we create that emotional signature across as many senses as we can tap into. And on an energetic level, that emotional signature represents our vibrational signature. So where we will be energetically is what we're going to magnetize towards us. On a more pragmatic, grounded level, we are driven by, most of the world probably knows this by now, but the actions we take are coming from an emotional response, not so much a logical response, especially the actions that will get us to long-term goals. So we have programs that are running in the background. Most of them we're not aware of, about 70,000, 90,000 thoughts that will prompt different emotional responses that will get us to take action, that will get to the results. So it's playing with the levers that we can tweak. And the levers that we can tweak are the emotions we embody, and even more so those programs that are running in the background.
So let's contextualize it. Take me through the process that you have in place now. So let's say somebody comes to you and they say, I don't know, I want to figure out my vision for, let's say it's career. If it's somebody's employed but is thinking, they're not happy, they want to create a different reality for themselves, or somebody starting a business or pivoting a business, whatever. We can choose any scenario, any context. What are the steps that they go through to achieve that final outcome?
Yeah, that's a great one. So there are 3 phases that I take people through that I've, over the course of doing this work, I realized are the most effective, so to speak. And the phase of creating the vision is actually the second phase. So the first leg of the stool, the first phase, is an audit of where the individual is right now, a values audit, understanding and building the foundation to get them ready to go to the next stage. So we dive into their values, we dive into what is the current resistances that exist. And I use kind of a 80-20 rule to give people the simplest, quickest tools to often there's certain degrees, there is some kind of chaos that can be in the life of that individual. There's a certain triggers, and there's a reason why they came at that point that they came. So in that first leg of the stool, we're kind of working on depressurizing whatever is happening, whatever the pressures are, or calming the F down in the life around with the quickest, simplest tools. And I believe in that the biggest leverages can be created with just minor, like as Tony Robbins says, 2 millimeter tweaks. So that's in the first month, or in the first phase. It can be a bit more than a month, actually. And the second phase, we are diving into collecting what are the main elements that the individual cares about. And there's various exercises we go through, looking in the past and looking in the future, and we build out the vision. of what that individual would love for themselves. What do they aspire for? What would make their heart lit up? And we look at the why behind it. That's actually one of the main pieces that's quite important for me, is that the folks that I work with and the dreams that we work on are held by a very strong why. That um, whether it's a material dream or whether it's some other dream of giving back in a non-material way, there's a powerful why that's going to get you there. And usually it comes down to because I care, because I love it, because it brings me joy. Um, and we become deliberate about what life they want to create. And often, if it's on a personal level, it's around four main aspects of life. The first one is your vocation, your career, your professional hats that you wear. So, looking at in the future, you want to be an author and you want to be a speaker, and you are also holding the CEO position, or you're mentoring or coaching, you're an investor at certain levels. And those are various hats, and they have to all fit together into a picture that makes sense. So that's your professional bucket. There's a bucket around your wellness, your well-being, physical, mental, emotional well-being. And we'll look at what that will look like. There's a third bucket around relationships, your most intimate relationship, your relationships with your children, if there are any, with your parents, larger social circle. And I love the relationships bucket, especially the intimate one, because we get into designing, like with your partner, for example, with your husband or wife, let's say, what what will that um, what would that relationship look like? That ideal dream relationship that you are moving towards creating with them, and it might already be ideal in a certain sense, but how are you going to be creating beautiful moments together? What are your date nights? Are you going to be dancing together, and are you going to be traveling together? It gets into very, very detailed, very exciting moments for individuals. I find this is where they come alive in many ways. And then the last bucket is around lifestyle and your finances. So it's how you're going to be leveraging your time and having fun, because we're here to also have fun. So it's those big buckets, and it's looking at what that life will look like in those buckets, and a little bit around how you're going to get there as well. And then the final stage is, and this happens kind of throughout, but we're identifying who is that identity, who is going to get you there, who is that you that's going to live that vision. If you were already embodying those traits, you would already have the vision come true today. And I'm very careful around not teaching or propagating the message that something is wrong with you right now, or that you're broken today, and that you're trying to get to something that's whole, and right now you're not. It's actually peeling the layers of the onion to get to that, to the true you today and the true you tomorrow, to even more embodied you tomorrow, let's say, but appreciating who you are today. And so that last phase, or that last leg of the journey, is embodying that identity. How do we embody it? Through the thoughts that we're creating, through emotions that we are embodying, that we're living, through where we're putting our focus, and through the actions that we're actually taking. And the actions that we're taking, are we taking them from a forceful place, or are we taking them from working now with something greater than us, with listening to those, to our intuition, with taking prompts from our environment, and seeing how when we launch the vision, it's like the rest of the world becomes our co-collaborators. But are we seeing it? Are we noticing it, that they're becoming our collaborators? Are we answering the phone calls? Are we getting the hunches when someone says, I need to introduce you to somebody? Are we noticing inspirations when they come through? So that takes, actually, this is where a lot of the attuning happens, and it's where the rubber hits the road, because we get into action, we get to play.
You light up when you talk about your work, and you've clearly found, fulfillment, which so many people try to find in their lives. What is it about the work that you do that lights you up so much? What is it that you love about it?
Oh. I don't know why that made me so emotional. um, I've I've thought about that so many times. I've been asked that question. And yes, in a big way, I lived that first half of my life not really in attunement to my dreams. So when I came around to the technique and then build out the practice around it, looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I'm helping people launch their dreams. There's this depth and desire to help bring people's dreams to life. Because of course I can relate it to my journey of not being in alignment to my dreams. But then it goes much deeper than that. It's part of it is family related and watching people in my family not fully living their dreams.
Mm.
So I'll speak about it. I have a beautiful relationship with my mom, but part of it being an immigrant, shifting countries, trying different things here, but not fully coming into kind of realizing her dreams in many ways and having to sacrifice many of her dreams. I think somewhere deep down there's a part of that.
Mm.
And on an even bigger scale, what really, really, really lights me up is when I'm working with someone, whether it's an individual dream or a business dream, where the goal, the motive is to create something positive in the world, to bring a change, to bring a shift. And I get really touched and really influenced by, I think so many of us are, just ecologically what's happening around us. So when I get to work with someone who wants to make an impact, a positive impact, and that's my longer term vision and dream, is to bring more and more of that work. That that really touches me. That really lights.
Mm.
So I really believe we can redesign, redream the future we all want to be a part of. Let's do it. Let's do it collectively.
Not very inspiring. Do you still do the meditations with people? Do you still do the recording of the meditations of their future selves that then they listen to, like the one that we did together?
Yes, so that comes one of the key exercises we get to when we're actually visioning is stepping into that future and then utilizing role play and storytelling. And as we do, a lot of the vision pieces get pulled out. And of course, they're collected even before that magical call, but a lot of magic happens on that call. And then based on everything that's been collected from the client, based on their story, their desires, I record the personalized visualization for them.
Mm. Yeah, I found that to be very unique and very powerful, and would also question my own vanity because I never managed to do any kind of meditation. And every time I would be in some kind of a context where we would be doing a meditation, I would be like opening, left eye and peeking at my clock and peeking at my time, and just always had a hard time. And then when you recorded the meditation for me about me, and it was a good 40 minutes at least, and I remember like really getting through it with no issues every single night. And I'm thinking, what does that say about me? Like how vain am I? But I found it to be really fascinating because I think because it was there is that piece when you are overly logical, that when something feels that it's more practical or more relevant, that you get into it more. And so I think there was to anybody who's watching who says, oh, I've tried meditation, it's really hard, that's what introduced me to it. And then since then I've been able to meditate to other things because I got the hang of it and the hang of the process through it feeling more tangible. And it felt, like overachievers can also relate, because every time I'm doing something and I feel that it doesn't bring practical value, it's hard to get into it. That felt like I'm doing something practical, I'm working on the business here and on myself. But that was the gateway to a lot of other, as you know, spiritual things that I've experienced since, a lot of other things that I've done too. So it's a really interesting, unique way, I think, of getting, going through that transition of being very practical and logical to opening yourself up to more. Have you noticed that with clients?
I have, and just a little caveat to say, not all visualizations are 40 minutes. So no, you're not freaking out. They can be shorter too. Um, so have I noticed it with clients that it becomes easier for them to adapt to meditating through the visualization piece? Yes. And I would like to clarify actually um, what meditation is, or what
Mhm.
the different types of meditations, and the meditation, for example, that I practice today, and I've practiced many different kinds and found like this one is the drops me in the way that works best right now. we have a term called mindfulness that often is used, mindfulness presencing. And to me, this is the beginning of the meditation that I practice today. It's coming into the present moment and noticing just what is. So it's dropping into the present moment, noticing sensations, noticing what I'm hearing, noticing the light on my eyelids, noticing what I'm feeling, tasting, etc. So that's kind of the entryway. And we can be practicing mindfulness, um, being in a grocery store, at a checkout counter. We don't have to close our eyes. We can be practicing mindfulness as we're driving, wherever we are. And meditation itself is being present, and being present with whatever is, with our thoughts, and focusing um, on something. So there's different ways and different things you can focus on. I focus on a mantra. We can be focusing on our sensations, and others will say it's not focusing, it's observing. So that's true as well. And as we're observing the thoughts, we're not trying to clear our mind. It's actually a misconception that I have learned. We're just observing and letting them be. And as a thought takes us somewhere on a journey, we come back and we refocus, or um, observe that mantra or that sensations in our body, for example. And then visualization, it's an active meditation. It's a little bit different. Something is guiding us, or we're guiding ourselves to visualize. But different things happen in our brain during all of those three states. And during the meditation piece that I just mentioned, the step two, our mind and our body relax in a way that in a visualization we won't. What I found is that doing that prep work of doing the meditation actually helps with the visualization, but many people don't have time for it and they might not find it practical. So in the guided meditations that I record, or in the guided visualizations that I record, I do the best to not just drop into visualization, and this is, you might have noticed it, but to have a priming that happens for an individual to be able to drop in afterwards. Because just dropping into visualization, especially for someone who is not used to it, and also not everyone is visual, use different senses, can be difficult. And that's part of working with a client, is figuring out, are you more visual, are you more kinesthetic, is it more auditory that you are relaying to, and then using that in the visualization for their senses. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very much so. And I want to share a practical example, maybe even a couple of what we worked on that came true. Because I know that for people who haven't done this and for whom this is very new, this all might sound very intangible. I'm like, okay, but what exactly? Like, what kinds of things can happen? We've talked about the process, but what kinds? So one of the stories I share all the time, of course, you know about it, but I share all the time, is when we started speaking about my dream of public speaking. And I told you that that was a big goal of mine. I'd done a little bit of public speaking, but I wanted to become a paid public speaker. And I remember it so vividly when we first had that conversation, and you were asking me the questions of, again, visualizing and describing what it would be like. And you said, would it be paid? And I said, yes. And you said, what would be the topic? And I said, personal branding. And then you said, who would be the audience? And I said, entrepreneurs, ideally from entrepreneurs organization, of which I'm part, because that seemed more relevant. And so I remember describing and answering all your questions. And you said, what? So, like, is anything standing in the way of this becoming reality? And I said, well, for sure, I'm not qualified and nobody's going to ask me. And why would anybody pay me? Like, that makes no sense. I gave you like a whole list. And then we were going through that. And then literally, it might have been like maximum a week later, when I was sitting in a cafe and I was waiting to meet you for breakfast. And I received an email from Entrepreneurs Organization saying, we wanted to reach out to you for a series of talks. This is the budget. This is what we can pay. You tell us what topic you're proposing. Are you in? And I remember sitting there and I'm like, is this fake? Like, is Darya impersonating our area manager? Like, what's happening? And I was in this state of shock. And I remember when you walked in, you could just see on my face that I was completely dumbfounded. You asked me what was going on, and I just showed you the email. And I literally remember your face, like, so, like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, what do you mean, of course? This is craziness. Like, this, I didn't reach out to anyone. I didn't even say this is potential. Like, I'm putting myself on your radar, like, tangibly. I didn't do that. and then it just happened, and it was one of many, many things.
So, can we deconstruct that for a moment?
Yes.
Have a few moments. This is such a great example. So first, there was a desire, there's a dream, there's a goal. I would love this, and my job, or whoever people work with, but I believe like this is my job, is to love that future, that vision, and see it before the person can even see it.
Mm.
Like fiercely stand for it, because if I don't believe it, I cannot hold space for it. So I get excited and I believe it. That's just the
Cool.
container within which we're in. Then we went through what's in the way, and it's debunking as much as we can the resistances, the beliefs, the fears that might be in the way. And there's different ways and different approaches to do it, so that you start believing and seeing this is possible. And then we probably did some work around visualizing and stepping into that future self and creating an emotional match and seeing yourself experiencing what that would feel and look like. So the less resistance that you have, the quicker I find things can start being recognized by us. And I say recognized because I believe the signal is always there to meet our dreams. It's whether we're picking it up or not.
Mhm.
So the signal is always there. It's whether we're picking up, and then it's taking the steps. Sometimes it does happen so magically that a LinkedIn message pops in, whether you didn't advertise something, or a call comes in from your organization inviting you without you asking. But then it still requires you to take the step. And I don't want to perpetuate the idea that it's just like sitting on your couch and the call is going to come. No, we are taking steps towards those dreams, very much so, but it's taking the steps.
Well, for sure. And then, when the opportunity comes knocking, you do have to be prepared for it, right? Because once that email came in saying, are you in for this, mini speaking tour? I mean, I had to have a talk, and I had to prepare, and I had to be ready, and I had to deliver. So, absolutely, that's a good point. You can't just like sit and, wait for opportunities to knock, because then they don't fulfill themselves. It still takes something for you to do. Darya, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's always been so incredible working with you, and I've always heard, equally magical stories from people that I've referred you to as well. If somebody wants to reach out to you and learn more about your work, and learn more about whether it's a fit to work together and experience, all those magical things we've been talking about, what's the best way to make that happen?
Thank you for having me on. The best way to make it happen would be actually through LinkedIn. They can also find me on Instagram as dream underscore underscore launcher. And I have a retreat that I'm planning at the beginning of November in the Bay Area. And so if anyone is interested to learn more, we'll have it down probably in the notes somewhere.
Okay, but tell me a bit about that. I didn't know about the retreat. I want to know about the
It's
retreat.
quite cool. I'm planning it with a wonderful partner. So it's Karina Diaz, who you know actually.
Oh, no way.
Yes. And it's called the Vision Blueprint. Um, it's going to be in a gorgeous place on the shore, on the ocean, arriving Friday night, leaving on Sunday. It's with your own accommodations. So the place is gorgeous, and we're going to be hosting the workshop there and helping people find accommodations, but it's their own. And it's going to be quite magical, a very, very select, intimate group of people, of 10 individuals. And we'll be diving into this vision work actually over the weekend, diving into what lies we're telling ourselves and recognizing our truth, and then stepping into that future and envisioning it.
Incredible. Okay, so sharing all the links below. Check it out. That sounds really awesome and magical. Thank you again so much for joining, and I look forward to all that you're going to be creating on your own, and all that we're going to continue creating together.
Thank you for having me.
And there you have it, LinkedIn, another amazing guest. And as I said, I was particularly excited about interviewing Darya. So, of course, we went over time as well. Highly, highly recommend that you reach out to her and see how she can make your dreams get launched and come true as well. And definitely check out her retreat. I find that retreats are just the most incredible way of just learning new things, exploring new things, and um, you know, what I love about retreats, because I've done a few different ones, is that you immerse yourself into just one thing for whatever the duration of that event is. And we don't normally get to do that, right? Like at home, we have so many things going on. There can be, like family demands, and then there's work, and then there's this, and then there's that, the social, just so many different things happening that sometimes we'll carve out, an hour a day, 2 hours a day to focus on something. But when you go on a retreat, that's the time you give yourself to just focus on that one thing. And I find that whenever I've done it, it's been absolutely transformational and magical. And of course, being guided by Darya doing something like that is, you will 150% certainly receive a lot of value. Thank you all so much for joining, and we will see you here again next Wednesday at noon Eastern.